Many companies pursue growth through international business strategies. The 5 ways for companies to enter international markets are licensing, exporting, strategic alliances, acquisitions, and new wholly owned subsidiaries. We're going to talk about the pros, cons, and some examples of each. The simplest way to enter a new international market is exporting. You don't really have to change a lot. You can keep the same processes, the same production. The only thing you have to do is ship your products to another country where they can be sold, generally by someone else. Because of all of this shipping, exporting has a lot of high cost, but it is the simplest way to start with international business. I work in a college town surrounded by agriculture. A major crop in my area is hay. Most farmers bale their hay and ship to ranches, dairies, and other buyers. But a friend of mine makes hay cubes, which are much more compact than standard bales, and sells them to buyers in Taiwan and Japan. His extra compact hay is easier to ship. Exporting opens new markets to sell his hay. Toyota started selling Japanese-made cars in the US in 1958. But you won't see many Toyo Pet Crown sedans on the road anymore, because frankly, they weren't very good. But Toyota learned from its mistakes to later sell millions of vehicles in American markets. Toyota currently contracts with Norwegian ocean carriers to ship vehicles from Japanese factories to North America. Licensing is the next way to do international business. Companies license their technology or intellectual property to others in exchange for a fee. The licensor gains a new revenue stream without having to invest in the new production, the capital expenditures, the marketing, or the distribution, and the licensee gains access to technology that they can use without having to invest in the research and development. It can be a win-win situation. Companies like DuPont and Dow Chemical have licensed technologies to create spandex fibers and petrochemicals to companies in China. The Chinese companies make the capital investment for production and they benefit from the technology. And DuPont and Dow Chemical don't have to make the huge investments, but still get paid. Because international business carries a lot of risk, sometimes companies choose to share that risk with other companies, and they do this through a strategic alliance. A strategic alliance could be something like a joint venture or a contractual relationship between those two companies. Strategic alliances allow companies to share risk and costs and the potential benefits. But these can get tricky or difficult if the companies don't integrate and work together very well. In 1984, Toyota and General Motors began production of the Geo Prism, which later became the Chevy Prism. It was basically a Corolla with General Motors branding. It even had a Toyota branded engine under the hood. This was a strategic alliance. Through this arrangement, Toyota gained access to extra production capacity and helped grow its sales in the United States. Another strategic alliance example was Payless Shoe Source, which operated several hundred stores in Latin America and the Caribbean. Payless faced a lot of challenges related to the cultural and legal systems of a dozen different countries. You can see the video in the description for more discussion on liability of foreignness. To help overcome these challenges and mitigate risks, Payless worked with joint venture partners in different countries. And finally, Inotera was a computer memory manufacturer created by Nanya Technology in Taiwan and Qimonda, a German memory producer. Nanya was already licensing technology from Qimonda, and the joint venture allowed both companies to share the risk and the cost and gain greater production capacity. Later, when Qimonda was struggling financially, it sold its Inotera stake to Micron Technology, giving Nanya a new strategic partner. Micron acquired Qimonda's stake in Inotera, which brings us to the next mode of international expansion, acquisitions. Acquisitions deserve a lot of discussion on their own. There's a link in the description where you can find a playlist all about acquisitions. But the basics are that a company purchases a controlling interest in another company in order to bring it into its corporate portfolio. Sometimes acquisitions happen across international borders so that the acquiring company can gain access to new operations and new markets. A major international acquisition was when Bayer purchased Monsanto to expand both its international market and gain access to new technologies in the chemicals and biotechnology industries. Bayer was already a life science company, but the acquisition helped it to grow. Another example of an international acquisition was when Kraft Foods purchased Cadbury, a British company with a wide variety of chocolates and other candies. Two of my personal Cadbury favorites are the cream and caramel eggs available around Easter. With the purchase of Cadbury, Kraft gained greater access to new markets and new products that it could sell. Yet another international acquisition example that opened the door into a new country was when PayPal acquired GoPay, a Chinese payment processing firm. The acquisition allowed PayPal to enter the new market quickly without the difficulty and risk of trying to build a new business from scratch. And speaking of building a new company from scratch, sometimes companies choose to enter new countries through a new wholly owned subsidiary. Sometimes we call this a greenfield investment, meaning that the company starts with a greenfield and has to build the new business in the new country from the ground up. This is the riskiest and most capital-intensive mode of international expansion, but it also gives the company making that investment the most control over operations in the new country. Mercedes started operations in India by purchasing 100 acres of land and building manufacturing facilities from scratch. Toyota spent $1.5 billion to set up a new wholly owned or greenfield investment to build a manufacturing plant in Mexico. Micron Technology invested $350 million in Malaysia to build a new assembly and test facility for solid-state drives. Many companies choose to grow internationally using one of these expansion modes: exporting, licensing, strategic alliances, acquisitions, and new wholly owned subsidiaries. I want you to find an example of international expansion, preferably in your industry, maybe your own company. What is the company doing, and which mode of international expansion did they use? I hope you liked the video. Have a wonderful day. Take care.